Hello and welcome to the Workstream weekly webinar. This week we are focused on the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, how you as an employer can claim up to $9,600 in credits for every new hire. That sounds like a lot, right? And one of the best things about this is you can apply it to any year that you owe taxes this year or any year in the next 20 years. So let's dig in a little bit more about what is WOTC. So it's a federal tax credit available to employers for hiring individuals from targeted groups who have consistently faced significant barriers to employment. And when you think about sort of what those groups are, some of it has to do with where they live, what other circumstances they've been dealing with, and really just sort of areas where there's low employment rates. So we'll dig in a little bit more about this. What if you participate in this? If you try to file for WOTC credits and you just do the automated, filing when you have a new hire to see what you could be getting, this is the average by industry. So without any additional work on your end in terms of trying to find those people, if you're hiring hourly workers in the construction, food and bev, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, or retail, this is the average amount every year, that you will get for 100 hires that you make in tax credits, just by having them fill out an 8850 form and pushing that information through to the IRS. There's a little bit more that they require on the back end. We'll get to that. Thankfully, we also make it so you can just automate that part. So who qualifies for the WOTC? There are a few different groups. One of the biggest misconceptions about WOTC is that it's all about hiring ex-felons. And this is actually the smallest group of people who people claim benefits for, or rather claim tax credits for. The number one are hiring people who receive food stamps. They're called SNAP. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Now, 8 to 10% of Americans are on these food stamp benefits. You can hire somebody who's not on food stamp benefits, but someone else in their family is receiving SNAP, and you can get a max tax credit of $2,400 per year just because somebody qualifies under these rules. Similarly, welfare is the second biggest. It's a long-term TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. So if there's somebody who's receiving welfare, either who you hire or they have someone in their family who is on this benefit, you can similarly get the tax credits up to $9,000 in tax credits, for hiring a person who qualifies there. Designated community resident. Now, this is the most vague and underutilized area, but it covers the biggest population of the United States. So empowerment zones, if somebody lives in one of these zones and they're between the ages of 18 and 39, they will qualify you as an employer to be able to claim tax credits. And then if they live in a rural area that is, somewhere that is far away from a lot of employment opportunities, they similarly will qualify you as an employer to claim tax credits for hiring them. And you can see there are a lot of rural counties. Keeps going on and on and on. And if you want the full list, there is a WOTC guide on workstream.us under ebooks, and you can see the full list there. We have it updated for 2020. So a designated community resident, they really just need to live within those zones and be between the ages of 18 and 39. Going back, the supplemental security income, this is generally for people who are over the age of 65, or they're blind, or they're disabled. So if you hire somebody who's over 65, chances are you could be getting another $2,400 in tax credits. Unemployment benefits. This is one of the best things to take advantage of right now, because we have a ridiculously high unemployment rate in the US with everything going on in the world. If you hire somebody who has been on unemployment benefits for 27 consecutive weeks, so 6 months basically, and they've received it, you as an employer, by helping them get off of unemployment benefits and giving them a job, can receive $2,400 in tax credits. Veterans, if you hire a veteran, there are lots of ways. This is the biggest tax credit. You can get $9,600 in tax credits, which is, you know, even more than hiring somebody who is on welfare or has somebody else in their family who is on welfare. Veteran, you just need to make sure that they have been out for at least 2 months, that they fit one of the criteria listed below. So they don't need to fit all 4 of those, but it's somebody who is a veteran and either has somebody who received food stamps, which again is 8 to 10% of the US population, somebody who has a disability, somebody who has been unemployed for at least 1 month, which again is very common right now, or there's an aggregate period of unemployment at least 6 months during the prior year. Ex-felon. This is a group which people misconstrue as being what the WOTC is about. An ex-felon qualifies you for $2,400 in tax credits. It has to be within 1 year that they were released from prison or 1 year from when they were convicted. So it's a very small window, and very few people take advantage of this. I would suggest if you do add screening questions to see whether or not people who are applying to your job might qualify you for this tax credit, separate out the ex-felon question and the veteran question from the other, like food stamps, welfare, resident questions, because generally when people see ex-felon, they are like 20% less likely to fill out the form to see that they qualify, because they think that this is something that's negative versus something that actually helps them get hired. Vocational rehab referral is a person with a mental or physical disability who's receiving services. There are organizations in your state that you can work with to help identify people who you could hire through this program, and you'll get the tax credit. And then summer youth, it's the summer youth. If you're hiring seasonal workers, this is something, look into it. Anyway, why don't more people file for WOTC? Honestly, it's really underutilized because it sounds bad. I mean, it sounds like you have to hire, you have to do prejudicial or sort of discriminatory hiring practices. And it seems very complicated because it used to be very complicated. You also used to have a very short time period, only 28 days from date of hire, to file the paperwork. Right now, you actually have until July 15th because of the CARES Act. So you can file WOTC every single time you hire somebody. It's just have them fill out one form, 8850, that they fill as part of their onboarding process. And then what you claim is you're claiming 40% of their eligible qualified wages up to the limit, like up to that $9,000. So what the government wants to make sure is, have you actually paid this person, in the case of $9,000, like have you paid this person over $20,000 so that when you're getting the $9,000 credit back, it's less than what you have actually paid them. They don't want people taking advantage of this. But if somebody, you hire somebody and after just 3 weeks, they quit, you can still claim 25% of what you paid that person for the WOTC tax credits. So the way that you apply, if you want to do this manually, so if you want to do this just on your own, without WorkStream, without, WOTC.com, like any of that, there are 5 steps. You fill out the form. There's one other form for individual characteristics. So it's a pre-screened form, and then you're like, oh, this person looks like they might qualify. You give them this additional form. And if it's the $9,000 credit that you want to file for there's a separate one for that, but there's also the long-term unemployment recipient, for people to say, like, yes, I was unemployed for a period of 27 weeks. So they have to fill out a form there. Again, you can tell employees like this benefits them because, well, I'll get to on the next slide, but basically it's like you're giving them an advantage because of these tax credits. So, you are asking them to fill this out as part of their employment process. Anyway, fill out the forms, receive a determination, and then you claim your tax credits. You can get them, file them anytime in the next 20 years. The way that we make this easy is the most complicated part of WOTC filing is that you have to identify who qualifies, and you also have to figure out, is it somebody in their family who is on these benefits and thus they qualify you as an employer. So what you basically do is have another company do all that background check and work for you. The other thing that is complicated is you need to submit the payroll proof that you paid this person. So WorkStream integrates with WOTC.com. That way you can just connect whatever payroll system you're doing, or you just upload your payroll report, and WOTC.com does all of this work for you. They've saved companies $7 million. That's how many tax credits WOTC.com has pushed for, and they're based in New York City. Okay, as an employer, it seems like on average, you are able to save, like $55,000 if you're in food and beverage and you hire 100 people. How could you increase that by 10x? Like, how can you get to the point where every single person you employ, at least qualifies you for $2,400 because they were on unemployment? You are allowed to use screener questions before you even choose who to interview to see if the applicant is likely to qualify you for WOTC credits. This sounds discriminatory. It is not. In fact, the way that the law is written is if an employer has a choice between hiring two identical applicants, one of whom is eligible for WOTC and one of whom is not, the employer may opt to hire the WOTC eligible applicant. When you get applicants in and you're reviewing their resumes or their application, that is when you can screen and say, I want to move these people to the next stage because they are likely qualified for WOTC. The entire purpose of the WOTC program was to incentivize you to do that. So you are not being discriminatory. You are doing what WOTC is meant to do, which is help these people who have a hard time getting hired find employment. And that way, instead of the government paying them benefits, you as an employer are incentivized for you to pay them, and so that they are able to work. And that's why TANF and other programs are structured as like welfare to work is how they're framed. How to screen with WorkStream and WOTC.com. So what we do is we actually identify people who are likely eligible, and then we ask them to complete additional WOTC forms. You as a hiring manager can just see like, okay, this person's getting a text message link to their phone, and they're getting an email, and it says, hey, please complete this form as part of your onboarding process. If they don't complete the form, they get a little reminder, hey, we haven't seen you fill out this form yet. Could you please make sure to fill it out before your first day or on your first day? And so we take care of all of the sort of like sending the forms out, making sure they're filled out, and getting them filed with the IRS to the IRS, I guess, within the 28-day window. You can use screener questions to identify people. One thing that we're seeing people do a lot of is they're actually building a hiring pool of people who they want to hire for in the future. So a lot of companies right now, they're posting on free job boards. WorkStream allows you to post on 10 free job boards. And they have positions that are live that applicants are coming into. And the applicants are asked questions such as, hey, could you send over a 30-second intro video of yourself and why you're interested in this position? And the other question that gets asked all the time is, hey, are you or anyone else in your family currently receiving welfare, food stamps, make sure you call them by their name, SNAP benefits, unemployment benefits? That's a question. And then the next one is, are you between the ages of 18 and 40? Or are you on, are you over the age of 65? those types of questions, the way that they're framed, if you use the exact language from Form 8850, you can do that in a way that's non-discriminatory, but make sure to stay within those limits. When it comes to the over 65 part, just ask if they are on the SSI benefits. You don't need to ask that they are over the age of 65, for instance. So while the other ones say, like we're seeing whether or not you qualify for WOTC, do you fit these characteristics? And this is a voluntary optional thing. The other thing you can have people do is like complete questions, collect this information, and then have it as a pool of applicants you can choose from later on when you are hiring. So you can choose, okay, I want to invite these 30 people who have applied in the past few months to come in and schedule, a Zoom interview with me. And they'll get a text message inviting them and saying like, hey, I wanted to follow up on your application. I was wondering if you're still interested. Here's a link to my calendar to find time for a Zoom interview. You're still interested. And here is an updated job description. So then in Workstream, what you can do is you can see, okay, here are all of the people who were contacted, from applying to the job. Here's everyone who filled in the form, who you can see like the form included the video interview and additional information there. Then you can see who of those people did you push through to request a phone call, an in-person interview. Maybe there's a second one. You offer the job, accepted, you've onboarded. You can do all that in Workstream. We also just right now, because of what's going on in the world, really want to make sure people know about the video and virtual training and onboarding. So in addition to SMS text, you can also send over video training, mobile quizzes. You can do all of the paperwork, just e-signature, so there's less passing between people and less unnecessary interaction. And when you are training people, you can do the embedded slide share with quizzes. So lots of other things you can do there. So now that's pretty much the end of the webinar. We had some pre-submitted questions that I'm going to go through right now. Yeah, I am happy to take any questions you have. You can submit them through the little Q&A part. Cool. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see the questions. Cool. Chat. Okay, great. Cool. So one of the pre-submitted questions we had is, what about the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act? So if you claim WOTC tax credits on an employee, you can also still get the credits that you can claim through the CARES Act, as long as it isn't in the same time period. So if you claim tax credits, the WOTC, and you apply it sometime in the next 20 years, that's fine, just don't claim it in the same tax period. And then as part of the CARES Act, you also have an extension on when you need to file WOTC paperwork. Usually it's 28 days. Instead, it's July 15th, just like all of our taxes are due. Cool. Yeah, guys, please feel free to post in the Q&A section or in the chat. You can also just post directly to me as a panelist in the chat. Okay, cool. So another question I have is, okay, let me see. Question is, do employees need to participate? So participation is completely voluntary. You can let them know when you're asking these questions that it increases their chances of employment because and use the standard sentence from WOTC. This is something we have built into Workstream, so it's like there's standard templated responses to make sure that you're following the law by the book. Yeah. Well, another question just came through, the anonymous. Okay. Yeah, okay, so what are the most popular ones? The most popular tax credits, I touched on this briefly before, but they're the SNAP recipients, so people who are on food stamps. They make up typically 70% of the people who ended up being qualified for WOTC credits. The next highest is veterans. And what's interesting is that the veterans group is the smallest group of people who in the United States should be qualified, but 7% of the WOTC credits filed are for veterans. So this just goes to the misconception again that WOTC is really available for hiring like veterans and ex-felons, which is not the case. Okay, we had a question up there. WOTC credits are only available upon hire, though no ongoing credits if you continue to employ the person in subsequent years. Okay, so the way WOTC credits work is when you hire them, you have to file immediately. The reason for that is they don't want you doing like, oh, I realized later and this had no impact on my hiring. They want the WOTC credits to like impact your hiring decisions. But you have ongoing credits in the sense that you choose which year to apply the tax credits from that specific person. So if you get $2,400 in tax credits because you hired somebody who was on unemployment, you will be able to choose, I'm going to apply this in 5 years from now when I owe, well, you know, when I have taxes to pay. So in that sense, it's ongoing. The long-term temporary assistance, I know it's an oxymoron, but the long-term temporary assistance, something NF, like TAMP, the welfare program, those are applied over 2 years. So instead of just getting that for hiring somebody for the first year, you get half the credits the first year and half the second. But with the rest, it's like you basically get them as soon as you have paid the person at least, what is it, like 2.5x what you're claiming, because only 40% of their eligible wages are able to like be claimed by you. So if you're claiming $2,400 in tax credits, you are able to claim that once you've paid the person like $6,000 or $7,000, because 40% of that is the $2,400 that you're claiming. I'm making this more complicated than it is. It's a little bit complicated, which is why Workstream has the integration with WOTC.com, and their tax professionals take care of all of this to maximize your credits. Is there a minimum time someone has to be on SNAP to qualify? Sure, so let me go back to that slide. Okay, so to answer your question, the minimum someone needs to be on food stamps to qualify is for a period of 6 months up until, you know, the date that they joined your employment. Or they've received it for 3 months. So sorry, it's 3 months is the minimum if the person who you're hiring is the one who is receiving food stamps. But if it was a family member, such as their children, which is usually the case, that child had to have received food stamps for a 6-month period up until they were employed. So minimum is 3 months within the last 5-month period if it's the employee, 6 months if it's the family member. But yeah, let me know if you have any additional questions about that. And again, through Workstream and WOTC.com, we take care of all of this. So it's just by the book of, okay, this person filled out a form and they follow up with them and get the additional information. And they make recommendations about how you can find more of these people so you can claim more tax credits. Cool. Well, unless there are any other questions, I think that wraps up today. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. You can contact me, Lydia, at workstream.us if you have any additional questions. And there's also a WOTC guide if you go to workstream.us and you go to resources, ebooks. There's a very long, very thorough guide that covers all this and has all of the locations that you could be claiming somebody for the designated community resident. So it's also really helpful to see which counties nearby and which urban areas within, for instance, within Baltimore, within New York City, within LA, you know, to understand where people need to live to be able to claim $2,400 there. So anyway, thank you guys again for tuning in. And then we have another webinar next Wednesday at 11 a.m. So please check it out and look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.